Sir, hold on. This ward is restricted. VIPs only. I'm going to need you to stop right there.
I appreciate the diligence, officer, but I'm the chief medical doctor here. I need to get inside.
Your uniform doesn't look standard issue. Got ID on you?
Right here. Photo, signature, and my title.
Chief medical officer. Huh. You run this floor?
I run.
March 14th, 2023. St. Michael's Medical Center. 7th floor, VIP wing. 11:53 p.m. In the next 18 minutes, a senior surgeon would be stopped, questioned, and placed in handcuffs outside his own patient's room. Not for breaking the law, not for threatening anyone, but because one officer decided his credentials were not enough. This is an analysis of Bodycam footage involving Officer Derek Hollis and the detention of Dr. Adrian Mathis, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Before we continue, if you value detailed, fact-based analysis of real Bodycam incidents and civil rights cases, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps this channel stay independent and keeps this work visible. Now, let's break down exactly what happened. The footage we're examining tonight runs 18 minutes and 42 seconds. It documents a confrontation that resulted in a federal civil rights complaint, departmental policy violations, and a complete overhaul of hospital security protocols. This case has been cited in 3 subsequent lawsuits and is now used in law enforcement training across 4 states. Let's begin with what the camera shows. Timestamp: 23:53 hours. Officer Hollis's Bodycam activates as he stands outside the VIP wing entrance. The hallway is dimmed, standard overnight lighting. The officer is positioned directly in front of 2 reinforced security doors. His assignment, according to dispatch logs, is to maintain a security perimeter for a federal judge recovering from cardiac surgery in room 714. At 23:54 hours and 11 seconds, the elevator doors open. A black male exits, approximately 6 feet tall, wearing green surgical scrubs. He is carrying a manila patient folder and has a lanyard visible around his neck. The individual walks toward the VIP entrance at a normal pace. No furtive movements, no attempts to conceal his presence. Officer Hollis steps forward and initiates contact. Officer Hollis: "Excuse me, can I help you?" The subject stops approximately 6 feet from the officer. He gestures toward the doors with the folder in his hand. Subject: "I'm here to check on a patient, room 714. According to hospital protocol, medical staff accessing the VIP wing after hours must present hospital identification and may be subject to verification by security personnel. However, hospital security and police security operate under different jurisdictions. Hospital security reports to administration. Police security, in this case, reports to the department's Special Operations Division. Officer Hollis does not request identification immediately. Instead, he makes a statement. Officer Hollis: "This is a restricted area." Subject: "I know, I'm the attending surgeon." At this point, the subject identifies his role. The term attending surgeon indicates senior medical staff with patient care responsibility. Officer Hollis does not acknowledge this statement. "You got ID?" The subject touches the hospital ID pinned to his breast pocket, turning it toward the camera. The badge is visible for 3 seconds. It displays a photograph, name, and the title Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Hospital badges of this type are color-coded. This badge is red, indicating executive medical staff with unrestricted access. Officer Hollis leans forward, but does not touch the badge or request to examine it more closely. "This your real ID?" Subject: "Yes, it is." "How do I know that?" The subject explains that the badge is issued by hospital administration and includes photo identification and clearance level. Officer Hollis responds by stating he needs to verify the credentials with security. Standard verification procedure requires officers to contact hospital security or verify credentials through dispatch. This information is readily available through department systems and does not require physical detention. Officer Hollis does not radio hospital security. He does not request verification through dispatch. Instead, he tells the subject he cannot proceed. Subject: Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but I've been cleared to access this wing for over a decade. My patient just had major surgery. If there's a complication, every minute matters. At 11:56, the tone shifts. Officer Hollis: If you're really a doctor, why are you here this late? This question introduces a presumption. The phrase, "if you're really a doctor," suggests doubt about the subject's stated identity, despite the visible hospital badge, lab coat, stethoscope, and medical notebook. The question about timing disregards standard hospital operations, where medical staff routinely respond to pages and emergencies at all hours. The subject explains that he was paged, which is consistent with hospital protocol. Officer Hollis then requests a secondary form of identification, a driver's license. According to hospital access policy, hospital-issued ID is sufficient for all medical staff entering patient care areas. The request for a driver's license falls outside standard procedure and is not supported by any departmental policy for hospital security assignments. The subject declines to provide additional identification, stating that his hospital badge is sufficient. This is factually correct. At this stage of the encounter, Officer Hollis is the only law enforcement officer present at the VIP entrance. No backup has been requested. No hospital security has been contacted. All decisions are being made by a single officer without supervisory input. At 11:57:18 seconds, the subject states his intention to proceed to the patient room. Subject: I'm going to step past you now and access my patient. Officer Hollis makes physical contact, grabbing the subject's arm. At 11:57:20 seconds, Officer Hollis places his hand on the subject's forearm and instructs him to step back. The subject requests that the officer remove his hand. Officer Hollis does not comply. Officer Hollis: I have every reason. You're trying to access a restricted area without proper authorization. This statement is inaccurate. The subject has presented hospital-issued identification and has stated his medical role. No policy requires further authorization under these circumstances. The subject requests that the officer call hospital security immediately. Officer Hollis states that they will do so after the subject complies with detention. This reverses the logical sequence. Verification should occur before detention, not after. At this point, the encounter shifts from a routine access dispute to a procedural failure. At 11:59:06 seconds, Officer Hollis radios dispatch. Officer Hollis: Dispatch, we have a possible trespasser on 7, requesting backup. This marks the first formal escalation of the incident. No verification has occurred prior to this request. The term possible trespasser is used despite the subject presenting identification and explaining his presence. The subject makes a final attempt to de-escalate. Officer, listen to me. I am Dr. Adrian Mathis. I performed surgery on the patient in room 714 this morning. I have been paged because his vitals are unstable. If I don't assess him, he could go into cardiac arrest. Do you understand what I'm saying? This statement provides specific information: the subject's full name, his surgical role, the patient's location, and the medical urgency. Officer Hollis does not verify any of this information. Instead, he retrieves handcuffs from his belt. At 11:59:41 seconds, without any verification attempt, Officer Hollis places Dr. Mathis in handcuffs. At midnight and 3 seconds, the subject is restrained. Two nurses are visible in the background. One is holding a cell phone. Hospital security has not yet been contacted by Officer Hollis. At midnight, 1 minute and 17 seconds, Margaret Steele, Director of Hospital Security, enters the hallway. She approaches Officer Hollis and asks why Dr. Mathis is in handcuffs. Officer Hollis states that they are detaining a trespasser. Steele identifies the subject as the Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. She asks why the officer did not verify his identity before restraining him. Officer Hollis responds that they needed to verify the badge's authenticity. Steele then gives a direct order: take those off now. At midnight, 2 minutes and 55 seconds, the handcuffs are removed. Total time in restraints, 3 minutes and 14 seconds. The subject does not speak. He approaches the card reader, swipes his badge, the system beeps, the doors unlock, the subject enters the VIP wing. Margaret Steele instructs Officer Hollis to remain in the hallway. She radios for her supervisor and the hospital administrator on call. By this time, additional units have arrived in response to Officer Hollis's backup request. Officer Hollis and responding backup units remained on scene. Internal hospital records show that Dr. Mathis entered room 714 at midnight 4 minutes. He assessed the patient, reviewed telemetry data, and adjusted medication orders. The patient's heart rate, which had been elevated at 108 beats per minute, returned to baseline within 20 minutes. No adverse event occurred. The medical assessment lasted 14 minutes. At midnight 18 minutes, Dr. Mathis exited the VIP wing. By this time, a police sergeant had arrived. Hospital administrators were present. Officer Hollis and responding backup units remained on scene. The sergeant's statement, documented in the incident report filed later that morning, includes an apology. Dr. Mathis did not respond verbally. He left the floor without providing a statement to the officers. 3 days later, video footage recorded by a hospital nurse appeared online. The video showed Dr. Mathis in handcuffs standing in the hallway, surrounded by officers. The video was viewed over 2 million times within 48 hours. St. Michael's Medical Center issued a public statement on March 17th. The statement confirmed that Dr. Adrian Mathis was a senior member of the medical staff and that the detention was unjustified. The hospital announced an immediate review of security protocols. The police department placed Officer Hollis on administrative leave on March 18th. The department's Office of Professional Standards opened an investigation. On April 2nd, the investigation concluded. The findings, which are public record, identified 4 policy violations. Violation 1. Failure to attempt standard verification procedures before initiating physical contact. Departmental policy requires officers to exhaust all reasonable identification methods before escalating to detention. Violation 2. Inappropriate use of physical restraint. The handcuffing of Dr. Mathis was deemed inconsistent with the level of threat or resistance presented. Violation 3. Failure to contact hospital security prior to detention. Officers assigned to hospital details are required to coordinate with hospital security on all access disputes. Violation 4. Mischaracterization of the incident in radio communication. The use of the term possible trespasser was not supported by the facts available at the time. Officer Hollis was reassigned to administrative duties for 6 months and required to complete 40 hours of supplemental training. No termination, no criminal charges, no civil penalties. Dr. Adrian Mathis filed a formal complaint with the city's Civilian Review Board on April 9th. The complaint alleged racial profiling and unlawful detention. The review board's report, released in June, found that race was a likely factor in the officer's decision-making process. The report cited several indicators. the repeated questioning of Dr. Mathis's credentials despite visible identification and professional attire, the request for secondary identification not required by policy, the presumption of deception implied by the phrase, "if you're really a doctor," and the decision to escalate to physical restraint without attempting verification. The review board recommended additional departmental training and a revision of policies governing hospital security details. Both recommendations were implemented by August. St. Michael's Medical Center revised its security protocols in May. All law enforcement personnel assigned to hospital details now receive a hospital-issued contact list with photos and names of executive medical staff. A direct line to hospital security is programmed into police radios, and any access dispute involving medical staff must be resolved through hospital security before law enforcement takes action. Dr. Mathis gave one media interview. The interview aired on a local news station on April 24th. He spoke for 11 minutes. He did not raise his voice. He stated that the incident was not an isolated misunderstanding, but part of a broader pattern in which professional credibility is questioned based on appearance. The interview was later used in a training module developed by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. This case has been referenced in 3 civil rights lawsuits filed in the 2 years since the incident. In each case, plaintiffs cited the Mathis detention as evidence of systemic issues in how law enforcement interacts with professionals of color in institutional settings. A study published in the Journal of Medical Ethics in October 2024 analyzed 86 similar incidents reported by physicians across the United States between 2020 and 2023. The study found that Black and Latino physicians were 4 times more likely to be questioned by security or law enforcement while performing routine duties compared to their white colleagues. The study recommended mandatory cultural competency training for all law enforcement personnel assigned to healthcare facilities and the development of standardized verification procedures to prevent unjustified detentions. Dr. Hollis resigned from the department in November 2023. Dr. Adrian Mathis continues to serve as Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at St. Michael's Medical Center. He has not filed a lawsuit. He has not sought financial compensation. He returned to work the following day and has not taken time off related to the incident. Hospital records indicate he has performed over 200 surgeries since March 14, 2023. This incident lasted 18 minutes and 42 seconds. It involved one officer, one doctor, and a series of decisions that deviated from standard procedure. The consequences extended far beyond that hallway. Policies were rewritten, training was mandated, a federal complaint was filed, and a national conversation was reignited about the assumptions that guide split-second decisions. The Bodycam footage remains in the public record. It has been viewed millions of times. It is used in classrooms, boardrooms, and briefing rooms, not as entertainment, but as evidence. Evidence of what happens when verification is replaced by suspicion, when authority overrides procedure, and when professionalism is judged by appearance instead of credentials. The camera does not lie. It shows what happened. The question that remains is what we do with what it shows. If stories like this matter to you, share this video. These cases only change systems when people see them. If you found this analysis informative, consider subscribing for more in-depth examinations of bodycam footage, accountability cases, and civil rights issues. New investigations are posted regularly, and your support helps keep this work independent and accessible. Thank you for watching.